The year is 2002, and while everyone was on MySpace, playing Neopets, getting blue eyes, white dragons, wearing Heelys and grills, and bumping Nickelback in your brother's souped-up Honda Civic, the National Football League was welcoming its 32nd team into the league in the Houston Texans. Bringing football back to the great city of Houston changed the landscape of the NFL forever. A division realignment took place with the AFC and NFC South divisions being formed, the Arizona Cardinals moving from the NFC East to the West, and notably the Seattle Seahawks moving from the AFC to the NFC. Since this time, the Houston Texans have failed to make any meaningful impact in the National Football League, despite having some of the greatest players to ever play the game wearing their uniform. Andre Johnson, Mario Williams, Arian Foster, J.J. Watt, and DeAndre Hopkins. All of that talent, and still, the Houston Texans boast a flaccid 3-5 playoff record and have failed to feature in an AFC championship game. What have I told you back in the 2001 offseason? There was a second city that, outside of some shenanigans from the royal and highly esteemed Bob McNair, got robbed out of that 32nd franchise spot in place of the Houston Texans. Oil tycoon and retired U.S. Marshal Buck Shackelford had a failed attempt to join the league in 1993 with the idea of adding a San Antonio franchise, a third Texas franchise, along with the Dallas Cowboys and then Houston Oilers, which obviously went on to become the Tennessee Titans. He thought that Texas was more than a big enough market, and the Shackelford family is absolutely beloved in the great city of San Antonio. He made a promise, he thought it could come through, and unfortunately, I feel like due to the actions of one man, it did not. Shackelford unfortunately passed away in 1998, but in his will, he had the stipulation of his wealth going to his son, being if another opportunity presented itself to bring a football team to San Antonio. The 2002 expansion vote was thought to be a lock for San Antonio. The eccentric heir, Bronson Shackelford, had everything in place to win the rights of that 32nd NFL franchise. But because of his lifestyle, appearance, attitude, many had claimed that a last-second, behind-closed-door deal between Jerry Jones, Bob McNair, and the current NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue had nixed the San Antonio bid and awarded it to Houston. If Jerry Jones was going to have competition in his own state, it was going to be with someone who shares the same high standard of values he does, not some wannabe rapper who, regardless of his intentions, would never represent the state of Texas in the eyes of the league or Jerry Jones. A father's dying wish, a misunderstood heir, a city left robbed out of the chance of NFL football, and a fraud franchise that has accomplished nothing in almost 20 years of existence. So why are we here? Well, it's time to tell a story. A flashback to 2002 when the NFL was awarding a city the rights to the 32nd team in the National Football League. A chance to correct a wrong that never should have been made, an opportunity to act on a father's dying wish, and to get payback on the most vile human being in professional sports. This is the Flashback franchise of the San Antonio Marshals. Welcome everybody to the debut episode of the San Antonio Marshals franchise mode here in Madden 19, where we're actually kind of taking it all the way back to Madden 2002. So because of the litigation between the Houston Texans and their improper ways and methods of acquiring a football team, there just simply wasn't enough time for that 02 season to get everything in place for the San Antonio Marshals. They had to have a quick rush to build a brand new stadium there in San Antonio. So what is going to happen here is in this 02 season, it's just going to be carryover. Every player that was already selected to the Houston Texans via the expansion draft has pretty much got a year off. They get a year off fully paid while the construction and renovation and transition from this failed and proper ill-eligible franchise in Houston can all transfer over to San Antonio. Now, the only kink is that the players that were actually selected in this draft, most notably, you got to look at the quarterback David Carr, and we also have starting tackle Chester Pitts. These players will have their contracts null and void just so they have an opportunity to play right away because of the draft. There was a little bit of a workaround there, less so than players that were involved in the expansion draft. So after releasing our draft class, it kind of came evident to us, like, who's the team that's really getting screwed here? You know, you had Bob McNair and the Houston Texans messed up. We rightfully got awarded our team. but we're still stuck with their roster for this 1-year transitionary period. The roster they drafted for their coaches through the expansion draft. We had to also give up our draft class. We lost a potential franchise tackle. We lost a potential franchise quarterback in David Carr. Why are we feeling like we're getting punished? We got awarded a team, but it seems like those obstacles are going to be too much to overcome as a brand new franchise next year. So what has actually kind of been litigated between us and the National Football League was we get an opportunity not to select our full 53-man roster through the expansion draft like the Houston Texans did, but a special expansion draft has been put in place for the San Antonio Marshals. We have 5 rounds. We have 5 rounds to select 5 players that will go in addition to the players in base roster that has already been selected by the Houston Texans. This expansion draft will follow the same rules as the expansion draft that the Houston Texans had to abide by. Every team in the NFL selects 5 players that are up for expansion draft. You can only select 1 player per team, no kickers and punters allowed. So let's make the most out of our 5 selections and try to make everything as smooth as humanly possible next year for the first season of the Marshals. And with the first selection of our 5-round expansion draft, the San Antonio Marshals are proud to select Zach Bronson, free safety from McNeese State, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, brings an 81 quick dev, without a doubt the best available player in this expansion draft, so we're very excited to bring him in to the Marshals. With the second pick in the expansion draft, the San Antonio Marshals are proud to select Jason Sehorn, cornerback, formerly of the New York Giants, 82 quick. He is 31, so he is on the downswing of his career, but still is going to bring a much-needed veteran presence to our secondary. And yes, he may be known to most of you guys as the last white cornerback. So that does no part does that play into it. It is cool to note that amongst history, but ultimately he brings an excellent veteran presence to our secondary and the last of a dying breed. In the 3rd round, maybe the biggest gamble we're willing to make, but it is also a big part in branding and getting even more excitement around the Marshals, around San Antonio. We are selecting Jerry Rice, who the Raiders have thrown up as an available option. Obviously, at 39, there is a very legitimate gamble. He might take this 1-year vacation and just say, I'm going to retire next season. Or maybe, what we're hoping, he takes this 1 year off as we control his player rights. He freshens up and tries to have one more big year with the Marshals next season. So it is a big-time gamble trying to bring in 39-year-old player, but he's still 89, still a superstar, and maybe the 1 year off will help him put it all together. So we are selecting Jerry Rice. In the 4th selection in the expansion draft, we are going to be selecting Blake Brockermeyer, tackle, formerly of the Denver Broncos, 79 quick dev. He's 29, so he still has a couple more years left within his prime, but we definitely need to start looking at building and solidifying our offensive line, which is always pretty much the toughest thing to establish if you are an expansion team and starting out from fresh. So a guy like Brockermeyer is going to bring some veteran presence and still a high level of ability and talent to our offensive line. And with the final selection in the expansion draft, we are selecting running back Rod Smart, 73 normal. He's 25, out of Western Kentucky. You may know him as He Hate Me. He's gone on to become a legend of another football league in another time, known as the XFL. But I figure at this point in time, with his elite speed, he's the type of home run hitter, which I guess you could argue that a lot of the players that were put up in the expansion draft were more so guys with fat contracts that were over the hill. He was definitely, in terms of most prime and athletic ability, head and shoulders above the rest. 91 speed, 91 acceleration, got great carrying. So we are going to welcome He Hate Me, Rod Smart, as the final selection in the Marshals expansion draft. So now that the transitionary year was completed, we need to bring in our staff, and we're looking right off the bat here from top-of-the-line trainers to the top-of-the-line scouts, and then ultimately looking at some head coaches. For our trainers, we're going world-class. World-class regression is paramount here. And Nick Garrett looks like he has all the traits we want in a trainer, so hopefully he does sign on. For the scouting, you can go a lot of different positions. You got running back, QB, DB, but I usually like to build the trenches as best we can. And Wes York's resume looks very, very nice to help us make a utterly dominant offensive line. Now, the most important hire we need to make this offseason is our head coach, and there are some very interesting names here. Pete Carroll, a young little alabaster who's coming over from the New England Patriots. We got some Jason Garrett, who's a former quarterback, retired early from the Dallas Cowboys. Bill O'Brien, another player. I think he used to be a former player, but spent some time with the Patriots staff. But ultimately, I mean, we kind of want to run a 4-3. I always like a 4-3, which is pretty important to me. I think someone like Pete Carroll, already coming in with that expert scouting, would be an ideal fit to run the Marshals here. So let's actually give him a generous offer. We're just rolling in the dough. Bronson Shackelford inherited his father's estate and wealth. We got $100 and some million. So we're gonna we'll offer him 5.5 mil over 3 years for Mr. Pete Carroll to try and see if he can establish himself as a legitimate head coach here in the National Football League. We got our scout, we got our trainer, but Pete Carroll has decided not to take our offer with the Marshals. Maybe lack of stability. So then our next best option is Jeff Womack, running that vertical zone run offense, 4-3 defense. He's everything else that we're looking for in a head coach candidate. And it's probably as good of a runner-up as we could have here going into this offseason. Find our next head coach. I mean, free agency is here. It's the ups and downs of a brand new franchise. So we're kind of going to have to mimic ourselves after our already gigantic rival Dallas Cowboys in the fact that we don't have a head coach to give us direction into how we're going to want to build this team right away during the first wave, or at least of free agency. So Bronson Shackelford is going to have to assume the Jerry Jones role of ultimately it's his team, and he's got to try and find a way to build the best possible roster. And we're starting with the 75 overall, 73 offense, 81 defense. But the biggest worry from that 5-round expansion draft kind of has come true. During that 1 year off, Jerry Rice decided just to hang it up. We knew it was a big-time game. We knew it would bring in some buzz. It already attracted a lot more eyes than, not drafting Jerry Rice and not having him play a single snap for the team would have. But definitely frustrating not to have a player like that. But we do have Corey Bradford here, 81, 27 from Jackson State. Not bad. I mean, we have our perimeter wide receiver, Rod Smart. He Hate Me has developed pretty nicely throughout our training camp. His speed's gone up. That's pretty much the only area we've worked on him because we need him to be that home run hitter. 93 speed, 93 acceleration. We do have some nice players here on the offensive line from that Houston Texan expansion draft. Steve McKinney here at center. He's an 87 quick. He's 27. We have Ryan Young at offensive tackle, 83 normal. He's also 27. So there's still a lot of good football there. At tight end, we have Billy Miller, 85. He's 26. Might be the most explosive player on our offense. So we're going to definitely have a nice little safety net. Now, the question would be, is Mr. Tony Banks going to remain our long-term starter here or not? Obviously, a little bit of a dual-threat quarterback, can run, can scramble. Plan is right now for him to be the backup, but, there's a lot worse options you could have as a starting QB. Defense, that's where, a team's bread and butter is right now. We got Aaron Glenn, who is also carryover from that Houston Texan expansion draft. He's a 92 quick. We have Seth Payne, who is a 28-year-old D-tackle, 80 overall, very well-rounded. We have Gary Walker at defensive end, 89 superstar. Now, he is 30, so his best football is kind of behind him at this point, but still is able to affect the run in ways that players in the league wish they could. Jason Sehorn, a player that we did select from that 5-round expansion draft, is 32, but he's still 81 star, so we're definitely expecting a lot of strong play out of him. Coleman and Bronson at safety. I mean, we have two of the better safety tandems in the league. We have Jamie Sharper at linebacker, might have been the most popular pick from that Houston Texans expansion draft, 91 quick. He is 28, so still in his prime at the linebacker spot. So, we got some nice players. Our special teams unit is really nice. We have Chris Brown, who's an 89, Stanley, who's an 80. And, that's kind of a make or break. That's a nice little area for our team that on paper is probably not going to be able to match up head-to-head with a lot of teams in the National Football League, but we do have a good special teams unit, so we'll be able to switch the field and hopefully get a lucky punt return touchdown or two throughout the year that could help us sneak out a couple victories. So while we still look to try to find a head coach, current head coach is floating phone, we're going to need to enter free agency with the only football mind coming in of Bronson Shackelford. I don't know how this is going to go, fellas, but Let's hope we can get a couple nice little pickups here, get a coach sooner than later, and at least have a nice little plan as we enter in the final stages of free agency and into the 2003 National Football League draft. So not a bad opening week to free agency here for Bronson Shackelford. These are the players he has already offered deals to, and hopefully we can have enough of a competitive offer to actually land him. First up, we have a D tackle, Sam Adams. He is 87 overall, 30-year-old, just more so against stuff in the run. 91 strength, great tackling ability. I think he also is a great little scheme fit for us. We have David Dixon at guard. Yes, he's 34, but our current starting guards are horrendous. We have no one in place at right guard, and our current starting left guard is a 59 overall. So we're pretty much at this point, even if it is just viewed as a one-year rental, someone like David Dixon should at least somewhat solidify the offensive line. At wide receiver, we're looking at Brandon Stokely, very sure-handed. Has a nice little speed, sneaky speed, if you will, and I think a nice little compliment to Corey Bradford. Same goes here with James McKnight, a veteran. He is 32, but when you look at what his skill set is, kind of still along the lines of a one-year rental, but 93 speed, 92 acceleration, so that's kind of what we need to get behind the defense. As far as quarterback is concerned, Randall Cunningham. Now, this might be just because Bronson Shackelford doesn't know a whole lot about football, and he saw this buzzworthy name and said, okay, he's 40. Yeah, very old. Still probably only has 1 year left in the tank, but he's 76 star. Still got a cannon of an arm. 90 throw power at this age, is holding up very, very well. Got a lot of speed to his game. Still 86 speed, 86 acceleration. And he's the kind of dual threat upgrade, at least, over Mr. Tony Banks. So if we can land these guys here in free agency, I think that's a decent start considering we don't have a head coach in place. And hopefully we could sign a head coach as we get to stage 2 of the free agency period, finish out that, and then dominate the National Football League draft. After head coach after head coach after head coach after head coach had turned down the chance to be the coach of the Marshals, we pretty much have to settle with Albert Blazer as he at least brings the base offensive and defensive scheme that we are looking for. He's worked here with M. Nagy, who I think is someone that's kind of through the pipelines right now for Andy Reid up there in Philadelphia. So, that's always something that we want to look for. The Eagles are a very explosive offense. So to get someone like Matt Nagy, who all we know really about him right now, not a very familiar name, is that he has ties with Philadelphia Eagles head coach Andy Reid. We'll take that. We'll take that. We'll give him an opportunity. Doesn't have any head coaching experience, so why not? Why not go all in? We got our guy in Randall Cunningham. We might still have to double dip in the quarterback position and grab one in the draft. We have the first overall pick in the National Football League draft. So I'm very excited to get to that point in time. And hopefully, Bronson Shackelford, he doesn't have a whole lot of acumen right now, but he is having 10 out of 10 confidence when it comes to being able to hit a home run in the 2003 NFL draft. All right, guys, this will be the end of the primer episode. We won't officially call it episode 1 because I was going to have one big episode. It was 40 minutes long. That is just too long to have for a Madden franchise series. So on Sunday, we'll be dropping the official first episode of the Marshals, so make sure you guys come back and check that out. As always, the first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.